So I have a couple of reasons for why I'm making this video today. Number one, I wanted to revisit the Sinden lightgun after 5 years. As you guys remember, the Sinden lightgun first started taking pre-orders. I believe it was around 2018, and here we are in 2023. And number two, I had a recent subscriber of mine reach out to me and ask me a few questions. He said, "Hey, Keo, I'm trying to get retropie image that works with the Raspberry Pi 4, two Sinden light guns. Thanks for any advice or direction you can offer. I have been watching a lot of vids and reviews, and KDK keeps coming up as the best." And so, number one, we definitely want to help this individual. I decided to reach out, reach out back to him. And secondly, I wanted to see how has the Sinden community grown, evolved over time, and have things really become an easy, streamlined process. Because if you guys don't recall, this was one of the more difficult light guns to set up. Needless to say, I don't like what I'm seeing in terms of the wording that's in some of the Readme files. The things that have kind of been said online or things that really haven't been addressed, because we still don't have any type of official install tutorial for some of the Raspberry Pi setups, and then of course for either one player setup or two player setup. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this. You guys know what time it is.
When I was just a baby, my mama told me, son, always be a good boy. Don't ever play with guns.
All right, so the Sinden light gun is a unique device. If you guys have been following for some time, if you're into light guns, it operates differently than some of the other light guns that are pretty much out there. It interfaces directly with your TV. Currently, the gun sells for $104. You can get the recoil version for $159. But the biggest issue over the past few years is, how do you set this thing up? So I decided to download the new software, give it a fresh look, because I know it's been a while. We've kind of stepped away from it. I could probably tell you guys that in another video, but there have been a lot of obviously happy people, happy customers, people who are satisfied. But regardless if you're on one side of the spectrum or the other, we all have to admit that there's a freaking lot of setup you need to do with this gun, especially on top of understanding emulators and whatnot. And then, of course, on some levels, you almost need to be a dev or understand coding to set this up, because this is not like the Wii Remote or AE Light Gun, Sinden, or Aim Track, where you have to go through certain directories, install the software in order for the gun to be recognized. And so I downloaded the software a couple of days ago. In fact, I thought I already had it. Wanted to go through some of the README files, which I'll read here in a few minutes. And I saw some things that should never exist in a README file. And so we're also going to take a look at the software. I saw some other things that have been addressed more recently that I also think that could have been brought to light back when people were first pre-ordering back in 2018. And so again, a fellow subscriber reached out to me. They wanted to understand something about how do you set up Raspberry Pi 4 with two Sinden light guns. And so the first thing that I decided to do was go on over to the official page. This is the official YouTube page, and there's no tutorials here. And one of my pet peeves, as I've seen over the past few years, is a lot of companies, entities, proprietorships, people who are modding in the community, reselling and so forth. They're selling items, but on the tutorial side and maybe aspect side of it, there really hasn't been a lot of forthcoming information. And so I just wanted to see, because I hadn't been to the YouTube channel in quite some time, wanted to see if there was an official tutorial showing anybody how to set the Sinden light gun up with the Raspberry Pi, and still to this day there is none. There are demos with this showing this working with the House of the Dead remake. We have Terminator 2 Recoil, Sinden light gun product demo. But again, these are all 2 years ago and so forth. And so I know that there have been a few other videos that have been made out there, but none of those videos are official. None of those videos show you how to set this up with a quote unquote pre-made image that is a little different than the stock Harry Bones image, which uses the official RetroPie version. And it only takes 2 minutes. It only takes 2 minutes to make any RetroPie image fully compatible with Sinden based upon what I know now, understanding RetroArch. I did that on a live stream for some of the Patreons. I'll probably do it here in the future. But anyway, somebody reaches out to me and there are no videos that I could, or official videos that I could point them at in order to fully, set up their interface or set up their light gun for the Raspberry Pi 4. So I want to scroll over here really quickly. This is the Readme page or the Readme note that was left. And I believe this was written directly for the Steam Deck. And the first thing it says is, I recommend you all install the older version of the PC Linux driver, version 1.08, available from sindenlightgun, and get that to work before switching to this. After switching to this, you may find some of this content below useful. You should be able to use mouse mode, so ignore the joystick flag. This is the first version of the Steam Deck sindenlightgun driver. I took notes along the way, but it is possible I missed something, so any problems with the raw notes or suggestions, please feedback to contact@sindenlightgun.com. Now, I'm not familiar with sindenlightgun.com. I have spoken with Andy on a number of occasions, and just so you guys remember, he did send me over one light gun. I ended up with two because the first one was missed in shipment. So I've been using the Sinden light gun on and off for past 2020, and I understand the full scope of the technology. Now, my issue with this is that I understand that it's a beta, but there's certain words and phrases that if you are selling a product shouldn't be acknowledged or admitted or put into the scope as it is in words. You guys will see that here in a minute. This assumes your Steam Deck is running on the latest OS. I bought my Steam Deck in March of 2023. It also assumes you are using the dock. If you guys aren't familiar with the Steam Deck, that's that handheld device that syncs up with your Steam unit. You could play games either on the dock, and then of course it's wireless. You can walk around with it, but you could hook it up to the dock and then also play games on your TV. Always connect the Sinden light gun direct to the dock, but you can connect all the other devices to the unpowered hub, which is connected to the third USB port. Steam Deck boots into Steam. Select Steam menu in the bottom left. You are going to shut down the machine and choose power off. This gives you some more directions there. Download this beta driver and extract the files. I recommend using a PC, setting up FTP to the Steam Deck, as this helps with ROMs, etc. and whatnot. Then it gives you some Raspberry Pi, very similar installation method here as far as how to set it up. This is kind of how you set up the RetroPie directories in order to get your light gun to work, RetroPie using the Sinden light gun. You need to install the software and dependencies. I haven't yet created a script because this is quite raw and needs more testing. Also, please note that you run these commands at your own risk. I do not know enough about the Steam Deck and whether any of this could cause unexpected software issues. I don't expect it to. Of course, it can't break the hardware. This is a phrase here in this whole line of context that I personally don't believe should ever exist in a README file, especially if you're selling a product to people that are using this, regardless if you're an advanced user, expert, or if you're brand new. You always need to have some type of level of certainty when you're selling a product. It needs to be 110% foolproof and fully tested before you disseminate it to the masses, before you release it. Because how can you fully give something out to people, even though I understand this is a beta, if you're really not sure? And if you guys are familiar, if you guys aren't familiar with who I am, I deal with builds, images. I do a lot of testing before I give it out to the community because I should have a firm understanding of how something works, if something breaks, and if it's going to screw up your unit before I release it. But words like this should never exist in a README file because it shows that there's a level of uncertainty and that there's a level of testing that you haven't really gone beyond to foolproof the device, or make sure you foolproof your code to make sure that it doesn't mess up something. And if you're positive that it's not going to mess up something, then honestly, this shouldn't be in here. Then it gives you some additional words here or additional codes. This is all sudo commands. If you guys are familiar with running terminal through Linux and whatnot, this is pretty much what you have to do. This is all advanced user stuff. This is not what I would expect anybody who just bought a sindenlightgun or wants to just casually use it on their Steam Deck to use. This is all commands that most devs use and most image makers don't even use if you're into that Raspberry Pi kind of thing. Make sure your sindenlightguns are on v1.9 firmware by using the Windows Beta 2.05 or higher. Has the information here. We need this joystick functionality also on the firmware, yada, yada, yada. Now, this is another concerning part which we're going to get into. I'm not sure how well Steam Deck Linux does with absolute mouse coordinate devices. So for this first release, I'm recommending you use joystick mode. I think mouse should work, but it hijacks the mouse cursor and seemed a bit messy. Hopefully people can experiment and feedback. If you guys don't really know this, but there's been a lot of image makers and devs that have gone infuriated at wit's end with products being sold, and there's no clear-cut transparency with how a device works, because in typical situations, again like this, you have a arcade device, a sindenlightgun, joysticks, encoders, and whatnot that are sold with Raspberry Pi devices. We'll say RetroPie, Batacera, PC. I'm thinking of CoinOps, Launchbox, Big Box. You guys are familiar with all the front ends that are out there. And typically what happens is people like yourselves listening to this will buy a piece of device. You want to get the most out of it, but you reach out to the arcade groups, the community. There seems to be this large dependency on the community to fix and address issues that are being sold. Now, if I bought a TV, my Xbox, my computer monitor, TV remote, my iPhone, you typically go back directly to the manufacturer to address all these issues. And what's been happening behind the scenes, just so you guys know, there have been a lot of individuals getting really frustrated that, we're putting work out there for free, but there's a lot of customer service work that's being done. And it seems that a lot of entities and people, even though they're selling a product, aren't realizing that some of this is being done for free. We're not getting paid. We do this for free because it's a hobby, but it seems that there's a reliance upon the community to fix, troubleshoot, test, and experiment on things that are a paid-for product. And a paid-for product should be fully represented and handled by the manufacturer, by the entity or individuals selling it. But it's really gotten so comfortable, even now, if you guys have even been following the Arcade 1-Up community, and just to give you guys a little information about that, if you guys are familiar with Marvel vs. Capcom 2, some of the devs want to release that game publicly so that, or this release some of the source code publicly so the community can fix it. So that's kind of where a lot of this is going for. And then you have entities, people who are selling light guns, encoders, and other things that are looking for MAME devs, RetroArch people, Pi devs, image makers to kind of integrate these additional hardwares into with their units, because they don't have a full understanding of how something works as far as some of the builds and whatnot. Just to give you guys a little scope. And so you have additional wording here. We're now 5 years into the sindenlightgun, where I think mouse should work. It hijacks the mouse cursor and it seems a bit messy. Hopefully people can experiment and with feedback. But again, I understand this is a beta. I'm not taking away from that. But it seems to be that this is the common scenario with accessories and things being sold, where there's a heavy reliance on the community to figure out, fix, troubleshoot something for a paid product. And we're community members, we're hobby members. We don't get paid. We do this for fun. We like to help people. But I think some of these companies and entities selling this stuff have kind of lost this, have gotten comfortable with the idea that you guys could play with something, you can fix it, but yet here's a fully untested product or fully untested code. Play around with it, let us know, get back to us, even though you paid for this. Also, I have only set this up with MAME to start. Other emulators may need something different. Again, where's the tutorial? These type of words should not be in a README file. The more experimenting I do, the more documentation I need, and it's important to get this first Steam Deck release out there. Now, again, I understand this is a first release, but even myself, working with Supreme Team and other devs in the community, even some of you arcade modders and resellers, you test your stuff before you sell it. I've never seen anybody write a README file where it says, I've only tested this with MAME. However, you have the potential to use this with something else. It should have been tested. This didn't have to release. I understand that typically you're not buying the sindenlightgun to use with the Steam Deck, but this is very strange if this is an additional selling point of the gun to use it with the Steam Deck and you don't have the time or effort to fully test something. And this isn't the first time. I'm just saying that if you're selling something, it needs to be tested. If you now know how to open the console and run CD lightgun, mono lightgun, this is the program you need to use to run the sindenlightgun. SDL tells it to open the calibration utility. The joystick flag tells the lightgun to go into the joystick mode, and Steam tells it to squash the screen. So the whole utility fits onto the screen, Steam Deck screen. You should see a mouse cursor moving on screen if you have lightgun 1 and 2. I'll skip this. Obviously, this goes into calibration. If the cursor is all over the place, you may need to change some lightgun camera settings. Please see the old Linux, okay? The lightgun may be very jittery on the screen, but don't worry, it'll be fine. Move the cursor bottom right and everything else. I'll skip some of this here. You can now set the driver. Okay, let's use MAME to test. Install full MAME. Avoid using packages like RetroArch and Steam Deck Unit for now. This guide assumes you know a little bit about MAME, and future guides will be more beginner friendly. Now we're going to skip down here to option number 3 and 4. Just wanted to show you guys these really quickly. This is something set up for an advanced user. This is typically what image makers will use. This is not even for your average Joe. And there have been a lot of people upset over the past few years, fully getting this gun and not knowing that a lot of this setup is to require, you need to have an additional set of skills in order to apply some of this or understand some of this in order to install. Now I want to jump on over to the Sinden PC software. There's been some advancements to this. Before, I believe you needed to have 2 different instances of the sindenlightgun software in order to use it if you had 2 different guns. I know initially there were some issues with how you update the firmware and being able to change the gun. So now you can quote unquote emulate different colors of the gun. So let's say right now I have the black gun. If I wanted to update it for the firmware to make it the blue, red, or black, you can now do that for the firmware. So they have made some significant changes to this software. But one of the things that definitely caught my eye was this important notice here. So let's take a look at it. It says, make sure you have enabled game mode on your display and maximum available refresh 60 Hertz plus. So when I saw this, I said, this looks really interesting. I don't remember seeing any of this when I first started using the sindenlightgun. So I went back in time, looked at some of the additional wording from this software back when it first released. And so as you see here, it says, make sure you have enabled game mode on your display. That pretty much is there. Notice it doesn't say anything about the Hertz. Make sure you have changed the Windows mouse refresh to maximum. That's still the same. Update sindenlightgun. This is all the same. But the one significant change that obviously you could see here is that there is a message that says, make sure you enable game mode. Now, originally, I didn't pay too much attention to this when it first came out. if you aren't familiar with game mode particularly is only applicable to TVs. That does not. I think some gaming monitors may have it. I don't think it was really there, but I know they have a particular aspect on there that you can enable. But for the most part, when you access game mode, that's only for your TV. I have a number of Samsung TVs around the house, and that doesn't apply to monitors. That does not apply to Dell monitors. That does not apply to Arcade One-Up monitors. This doesn't really apply to any type of low-end monitor. This is important because, number one, some of you, and I came up with a few Reddit files, and I'm not going to, read all this, but some of these comments were posted a couple of years ago, and I just wanted to give you guys an idea because I wondered if this was brand new in terms of how does the Sinden lightgun respond with different TVs. And I think I may have mentioned this in a previous video or even talking to some of you in the community, but the Gun 4 IR, the AE light gun, aim track, dolphin bar, those all work with either Bluetooth or some type of infrared technology. None of those devices are going to be affected by the type of TV you have. Only the Sinden light gun would be susceptible or be affected by what type of TV you have. There are a number of different TVs out there. We know we have LED. You can have the old DLP, plasma. You also have OLED now. And then, of course, the one thing that we would have to factor in, too, is a lot of these manufacturers of TVs could use different panels, which could also affect the light gun. And for those of you using the Sinden light gun, you can also have the brightness in the room obviously has been affected. The darkness, if the room is too bright, if it's too dark, it affects the performance of the Sinden light gun. So I had already speculated that I wonder how the refresh rate on the monitors or the TVs you're using drastically affect the performance and the difference. And the reason why I bring that up is because I was talking to somebody a few days ago and they were using their Sinden and said that they had drag. And in reference to that, I said, well, maybe it's emulation, but the only other thing could be the actual monitor itself. And that's something I speculated about. And so it wasn't until just a couple of days ago where I pulled this up on Reddit and then obviously noticing what the software had to say that your refresh rate does affect the performance of the Sinden light gun. So as of right now, it says here, use 60 Hertz plus. It doesn't say just use 60 Hertz. It says use 60 Hertz plus. So your gun and the technology of the gun could be drastically affected if you're using anything under 59. And this is important because we all know that a lot of you light gun modders and those in the Arcade One-Up community have been using those old Dell monitors. And those are probably 45 to about maybe 55 Hertz, maybe 58, but we know they're not anywhere around 60. So, but again, this is important to know because none of this was mentioned at launch, that you needed to have a specific TV or a certain refresh rate in order to get full optimization of your Sinden light gun. So if you guys also remember, because I know most of you already have the Terminator 2 Arcade One-Up cabinet, and I did a video on that some time ago. Where we looked at Marvel vs. Capcom 2. I think this was the BOE monitor. And one of the specs of the monitor, it uses a 14 millisecond monitor. And I forgot, I'll get back to that in just a minute. But I believe the refresh rate, we'd have to check the exact monitor to find out what they're using for Terminator 2. It uses 60 Hertz, which kind of puts them safe. But it does make me wonder if they're not using a monitor, if that monitor they're using for Terminator 2, because I think some of you have maybe mentioned this. If it's under 60 Hertz, then that means that they would have put a monitor in that cabinet that's not built up to the spec of what the Sinden light gun needs to operate. We know that they're using lower end monitors. You can just get those off the, well, you buy them in bundles. I'm not going to go into detail about the kind of monitors you really need, but we have the details here. But they're not gaming monitors. They're not the ones that are going to give you 120 Hertz or 60 Hertz plus. Even traditional gaming monitors you can get, you can still turn on 59 Hertz. But that is something to look into of whether or not Arcade One-Up is using a monitor that's built for spec. considering they're using the same Sinden light gun technology. And now it is being mentioned that you need to access game mode or have specifically something at 60 hertz to get full optimization for it. Now, the other thing that does point out here is that this message says that you need to enable game mode. Now, if you're familiar with the Samsung TV, for instance, game mode will then usually bring the Samsung TV anywhere down from 14 millisecond response time. I have a video on understanding millisecond response time to about maybe 9 or 10 milliseconds. And of course, RK 1-up monitors, we know, doesn't have a game mode optimization. It has 14 millisecond response time, and that's all you're going to get out of that. So for those of you wondering if you've had drag or maybe noticed some performance differences between the official Sinden light gun and the performance on what you're using on your RK 1-up unit, that could be the issue in terms of why there's potential drag, or you're running into that type of deal. But you do need 60 hertz plus in order to fully use that, based upon what the software is saying here. So I'm just a bit concerned that, you know, a lot of these important facts or maybe omissions are now just being brought to light, you know, 5 years later, knowing that this could have been an issue prior to people buying it. We're on the Micro Center website right now. I just wanted to show you guys this, you know, briefly, you know, just shopping around so you guys get an idea about what's out there on the market. So you obviously know what smaller hertz is. You have 60 hertz, which is typically standard for most TVs and monitors. Then, of course, you go up from there to 120 hertz, which is usually what most TVs can get if it's 4K, if you're using HDCP. I think it's 2.0 or 2.1, I believe, which it is. You can get that. You can obviously get that on a lot of gaming monitors. 144 hertz, I can get that on my PC, anywhere between 60 hertz or 177. If you're using DisplayPort or some of the DVIs, 165, 175, 240, 360, and 390. Those are typically gaming monitors. And so it's important to know that, you know, when you have this piece of technology, prior to it being sold, in my opinion, I'm sure maybe most of you guys would agree with this, that you need to have a firm understanding about what it is you're selling. You know what the technology is, and then, of course, test it with different forms of technology, because you're going to run into customers that have different working situations. Not everybody's going to have 60 hertz or 165, 175, or 240. And so to sell a product like this adequately, so that way it is fully acknowledged by everyone, so you know what exactly it is you're truly getting, all of these tests and all of these things should have been conducted prior to this type of notification that you see here on the software. Because again, I want to point out that this was never brought to the attention or mentioned when the software first came out. I know that says beta, but then if you go after that, the beta later on, it did say that there was that it was never acknowledged that you needed to have something 60 hertz plus. And as far as I know, there hasn't been any tutorial or setup that says, hey, this is the experience you're going to get at 60 hertz, 120, 144, 165, 175, you know, 240, or even 360, because there are gaming monitors out there. And so the other significant point that I definitely want to mention is, again, the software says gamer mode. It doesn't say millisecond response time. So some of these, the wording does go hand in hand between activating gamer mode, which honestly most monitors aren't going to have. That's only specifically for TVs. And then the refresh rate. So this also gives you a clear distinction that you would need to have a TV or monitor probably under 10 millisecond response time. That's the indication you get here from some of these words. And so you guys know I did a video on this. You do have monitors that have 1 millisecond, 30, 40, 4 milliseconds, 8 milliseconds. And understanding that and knowing that affects your technology. It affects maybe you're having drag or the performance that you're having for your gaming experience. But again, that's going to require further investigation, because we know that most of the RK 1-up monitors aren't using anything based to spec if this is correct. They're using 14 milliseconds or maybe a little bit higher for some of those monitors. I know the crappier ones that people don't like are using probably 5 millisecond, the ones that are washed out with Arcade 1-Up, just to give you guys a perspective idea on that. So before I go any further, I just want to keep you guys all in mind is I'm an experienced user. I would think that I am. I'm familiar with a number of different light guns and basic setup with a number of different emulators and RetroArch. I have a couple of Sinden light guns. I've had the Gun4IR, AE, One Shot, Weak Dolphin Bar, all that stuff. And a lot of the setup for a light gun in general should just be really straightforward. I've never had difficulty setting up any light gun compared to the Sinden. And so, even though I understand a lot of this, and you guys may reach out or leave comments, I'm looking at this from a buyer perspective. If you're a first-time buyer, or even if you're just quote-unquote knowledgeable of emulation, but where do you go to get a guide to set this up? There's no videos. I'm on the Sinden wiki. It says this is for 2-player setup, for dual setup. And there's no tutorial here. In fact, let me open this up. Let's see what this says. Let's see. Please note this setup guide is for a single light gun setup. For dual setup, instances of the software required to be running. And again, this is for Windows. This doesn't say anything about 2 light gun setup for the Raspberry Pi. Because again, that's what the guy was asking me questions about. And so here I am just as another community member or a user looking to help someone. But I have no information to reference or even point this guy in the right direction other than contact customer service that I could give him to follow through and set it up. There's nothing here. There's absolutely nothing here other than probably use the bare bones image, which has already been pre-configured by the, again, the community. And then, of course, I know Batacera has one for PC, which is already plug and play compatible. But there's no tutorial here for your buyer or for a customer to follow through and set up. I mean, I'm looking. Troubleshooting, setup guides, dual gun guide. I'm clicking on this. Where's the tutorial? There's no videos. There's absolutely nothing here. But anyway, before I go, there's something else I definitely want to show you guys. So I went further in here into the software setup. There was another section I wanted to point out to you guys. We're going to take a look at. Let's see here. The multi-monitor configuration. So if you guys are familiar, when I first got the Sinden light gun, I was playing Rambo on 3 different screens. And so this says, due to a Windows update, the light gun only works on the monitor chosen as the main display in Windows display setting. No calculations and ratios are needed. All right, so let's go ahead and squash this right now because this isn't absolutely true to a large extent. So if you want to set up multi-monitor gaming for your Sinden light gun, you could do that in order to access it here. Let me just close out a few monitors. You want to do it from your NVIDIA control panel, or if you have AMD, you could do it from that too. And you want to access your setup multiple displays. And what you want to do now is activate something called span displays, which is your gaming surround visual. So you can only span 3 monitors. If you need to, you could do 2. You could even do 3. It does not work with 4. And so what you do is this allows you to, it really creates really one monitor, so to speak, but it allows you to span your display on the multiple different monitors. And I do this every now and then if I want to have a surround display. And so this allows you to map or extend the border around 2 or 3 different monitors. So we have here, I have my 4, 1, and 2. 1 is in the middle, And we're going to go ahead and enable surround display. And now this is going to turn black for a minute, so I'm going to switch over to my cell phone camera review because sometimes this messes up the graphical interface while I am recording because it throws everything out of whack. And this is how you enable multi-monitor display for your Sinden light gun. So as you can see now, instead of looking at one different monitor, we have all three monitors span that creates a surround gaming experience. We have monitor 4 on the left, 1 is in the middle, and number 2 is over there on the right. All right, so I'll give you guys a better look at it here. We'll change some of the settings. So let's go ahead and turn on the Sinden lightgun software. We're going to go ahead and enable it. Move it over here so you guys can see it a little better. And once we turn back on the Sinden light gun, we'll be able to access and have the border surround the whole screen so you guys can see what's going on. So you can see the gun is working. It's working. I'm trying to do this with one hand. All right, let's restop it. All right, so the Sinden's light gun is working. I got to go ahead and calibrate it. And then once we have it calibrated, we're going to go ahead and turn on the border around it. So that way we have perfect calibration and you can see me moving around freely. And there you go. Their Sinden border has been activated around 3 different monitors. Now, if you want, you can also change the resolution or the the resolution to stretch this out even further. So when you enable this border around the surround display, it eats up a lot of the frame. You can actually fix this if you change the visual build of this, or the aspect ratio. I believe it's like 5,000 something. So if I increased it to, let's say, 5,800, or I believe it's 6,000, I forgot the actual number, it'll use the border around the entire screen and the outline. It won't eat up so much of the space. So that way, if you guys are familiar with the 16 by 9, there's a 16 by 9 border for one screen. So if you wanted to have it around the entire surround display while I use 3 monitors, you'd have full access to see the entire screen with the border, and it won't chop anything up in half. You guys know what I'm talking about, how when you activate the Sinden border, it eats up that additional space on the left or the right, or maybe sometimes the top. No, you'll have full access to the entire resolution of that if you manually type it in. But I forget what it is off the top of my head. I've done it a few times before. But if you know what your actual resolution is while doing this, then you can set it up and have your full gaming surround available across 3 different monitors. I will admit, though, that sometimes this is a pain in the butt changing it back, which is sometimes why I don't like doing this. So it does take a few minutes to change back, but if you definitely want to just use a permanent setup like this for your gaming resolution, then it'll work out perfectly fine. I want to expand it any further, but it does work. All right, so let's go ahead and disable surround. I hope this hasn't jacked up all my icons and thrown everything all over the place. Takes a little while. I hope you guys enjoyed my commentary on the Sinden light gun, looking at this 5 years later. I personally believe a lot of these things that have kind of slipped through could have been addressed in the development phase of it. You know, and I'm familiar with Andy Sinden. We've spoken before. You know, we appreciate his efforts. But, you know, in the end, the only people who get frustrated, upset, because I've never seen this, you know, out of all the arcade accessories that are out there, and I'm not going to read any of the comments or really show what's really been said. You guys have seen Reddit, even going back a few years ago. There's been a lot of frustration just in terms of setup. Even people who claim they've loved it, they will admit there's a lot of, of setup. And I've never seen people just really get upset about a arcade gaming accessory, just trying to use it. For the most part, it's not as easy as it is. Thank God we have developers and community members who have helped make certain light guns plug and play compatible. That's all been community. But it really concerns me that a lot of manufacturers, entities, and whatnot, they will put out a product. They really don't want to associate their product with ROMs, but obviously we know that's what it's there for. And there hasn't been a full setup process. You don't see any tutorials. Relying on community members for a paid, product. But a lot of these things could have been, and even now could have been avoided. And, I was reading this Readme file. I was motivated because somebody was asking me about two-gun light gun setup, Sinden light gun setup on the Pi 4. And even myself have not seen a tutorial. You don't see a step-by-step guide. There still is no official installer. The Supreme team made one. We have one on our Supreme image where there is an official installer. You don't need to create as many images like Harry Barebones, the community, the Barebones image, where you have to keep releasing a new image to update the software. No, there's an official installer. It can be done. It is available, and you can plug it in and start using it to navigate around. But I haven't seen anything officially or tutorials, like I've said, and that has concerned me. It has caused frustration for many others like that. So I wanted to shed light on this because I've seen it. I understand your pain and what you guys are going through, and it is avoidable. Like I've said, Readme files should not be written with optimism or I may try this or I'm not sure or it might work and I don't know. That shouldn't be in regards to a product, and all it does is add stress. So let me know what your thoughts are below. I will probably do a tutorial. Maybe. I've spent a lot of time with Sinden setup and stuff. But maybe I'll probably do one once and for all, showing you how to convert anything to make any retropie image compatible. I know I did it for the Patreon subscribers. It was a nice turnout for that. But let me know what your thoughts are below. I just wanted to share this here because I personally didn't like it. I think, after 5 years, we should have more substantial growth. And, reading stuff like this here about the whole game mode leaves a lot of questions to ask. If you have a sufficient monitor for your device, I mean, that could have been acknowledged beforehand as far as milliseconds and whatnot. And then this new update saying 60 hertz. But again, I think this has been available now. This wording may have been here since July 2022, but I really haven't touched it since then. So again, keep you guys updated. I'll catch you guys later. Peace out. Bye-bye.